Okay, you guys saw this work the other day when it had a load in it. That was about 3,000 pounds. The bed weighed about 450 and the load was about 2,500 pounds. So about 3,000 pounds total. Rated to do 4,000 pounds, and I have no doubts it will do that. Anybody that says it won't lift that amount, I'm going to question, you know, if they have a half-ton truck, possibly with smaller batteries, and they're not leaving their truck run. It could be putting a drain on the battery. It's an electric pump, so, you know, make sure you have your truck running when you're utilizing it. But now I just want to go over some things with this kit. The directions leave something to be desired. They weren't real clear. I found them to be pretty confusing. I think if Pierce would put some more pictures in, not to sound cliche, but a picture really is worth 1,000 words. If they would add pictures to those directions instead of just the text, it would have helped out tremendously. So to go over some of the issues I had with the kit, first of all, let me go ahead and say right now, I am impressed with it and I am happy with it. I would definitely highly recommend it. I just want to point out some of the issues I had so that you know what to be aware of. You know, just to give a little comparison of what this is compared to other options. You know, I think this is your best bet for a dump bed. Your other option would be a dump trailer. They start at $5,000. And for $5,000, you're getting a single axle trailer that's only rated for 3,000 pounds. I can put 3,000 pounds in the bed of my truck, and this kit was $1,400 directly through Pierce. So less than a third of the cost. And with a dump trailer, you're going to have registration, inspection fees, you know, maintenance, all kinds of other added costs. Your next option would be a steel bed insert. Those weigh 800 pounds. So you're hauling around 800 pounds even when you're not using it, which is going to hurt your fuel economy, and it takes away from the payload capacity of your truck. And even those dump inserts cost $3,000, so we're still over twice the price. So again, this is by far your best option and your best value. The other thing with this is you also have the maneuverability of backing this into a tight area or into the woods. You wouldn't have that maneuverability with a dump trailer. And one of the biggest advantages I personally love is look at the access to underneath of the bed and the frame. I can undercoat this frame and bed every couple of years with ease. I have easy maintenance to my fuel pump, fuel lines, everything. So again, if you're looking for something to be able to dump loads of stone or whatever it might be, I highly recommend this. And again, it was cheaper right directly through the manufacturer. I'll put the link in the description of the video. So some things, starting right off on step number 1, you have to drill 1.25 to 1.5 inch hole in the frame for the hinges, for the hinge assemblies in the rear. Now, that gets done at the back of the frame. I just want to kind of demonstrate for you here. Where you would need to drill your hole, you know, right here, let's say the hole's there. There's already a hole in the frame where I need to be drilling my 1.25 to 1.5 inch hole, and so my pilot bit would be hitting that hole. My pilot bit on the hole solid bit. So you can't do it. If you don't have a solid spot for your pilot bit to start, the hole saw is just going to go all over the place. So I had to fill that area in. Once you moved past that, again, the description wasn't real clear. It took me a bit to work out what they were trying to say to get the hinge assemblies in. Next thing was the captured nut on the hinge assemblies. You see the captured nut right there? I had to trim those brackets. Otherwise, it would hit against the bolt heads when the bed went up and down. So I just had to trim the bracket just a hair. I was still able to use the captured nut bracket. And then also you'll see where I trimmed the bed bolt that goes down through that captured nut. If I didn't do that, that was so long that it also was hitting up against the pivot bolt that goes through the frame and through this pivot bracket. The pivot brackets we're talking about here are the blue pieces you see there. Some other issues. They give you an extension tube for your fuel filler. That brings your fuel filler back in front of your tire. Now, I'm a redneck. I do dumb stuff with my truck. A lot. I don't want my fuel filler anywhere near my tire. I also don't want to be slinging rocks and mud at my fuel filler. On top of that, even if you did decide to do that, they don't give us an extension hose for our return vent line here. So when I move this up here, I have nothing for this line. I just trimmed 7 inches off of the hoses and left it right here, which I think is perfect. Another added bonus to this, it makes you use the pump. The average person is not using this pump every day. So having our fuel filler here where we have to lift the bed a little bit to get to it, you know, kind of forces you to run that pump up and down every so often, which is going to keep the seals lubricated and everything else, versus installing it, having it sit on the truck for months and months and months not being used, you know, whatever the case may be. One of the, probably the biggest issue I had with this, let me show you this here. When this scissor assembly is in the down position, it kind of bounces around under there. They give you a cheap little cable that you stretch across from frame rail to frame rail that the scissor assembly rests on. You can't run that cable from here straight across. It hits up against the exhaust. So you have to run the cable on the outside of the frame under the exhaust and then outside the frame over there. That cable broke in my driveway. I can only imagine how long it would last with the scissor assembly bouncing on it as I'm going down a bumpy country road. So I fabricated up this bracket here that goes across the frame, and it can be mounted up on top like I did here, and then the bed sits flush with it, or you can mount it on the underside of the frame rail if that is more aesthetically pleasing. Now, I did contact Pierce with some of these issues I had. Well, with all the issues I had. And they were very helpful. I then got a call from somebody higher up in the company, and they actually, you know, called me and contacted me and wanted to see what issues I was having and how they could help. I don't care if you have a million issues with a product. In my opinion, how I judge that product is the customer support I get with those issues, and Pierce was second to none. So, you know, I talked to them. I think we are going to be possibly seeing a bracket added into future kits. I'm not positive on that, but they were interested in some of the ways I resolved some of my issues, and I think they're going to be taking another look at their directions, rewording some of their instruction sheet, and hopefully adding some pictures. The next biggest issue I personally have was mounting this pump. Now in their video that's labeled on YouTube as the official video, they show the pump mounted here, which is where the instructions say to put it. It does not fit. This reservoir is too large. It won't fit here. Through some digging, I found out the reason the video shows the pump fitting here is because that pump is not from Pierce. That pump, I believe, is sold through Northern Hydraulics, which is who put that kit on the truck in that video. I don't believe that was a Pierce installed kit. I believe that was done by one of their customers. So you can buy these Pierce kits through Northern Hydraulics. My truck has a little extra space here. We'll just leave it at that. Some of you know what I'm talking about. So my pump fit in here beautifully. My personal recommendation, if you don't have that pump that fits in this area, I would cut out this spare tire mount area. Now I know it's a structural integrity of the truck. You can see how thick this bracket is. I'm not saying just hollow it out. I'm saying cut out some of this section and take some brackets across here to mount the pump. You're not going to lose structural integrity of the frame, and you'll have a much nicer, cleaner area to install. And I believe the electrical lines should still reach. You might just be a hair short. Now the other thing with the directions on mounting this main frame piece here, they call this the lower frame, I believe, wasn't real clear. Now on these Super Duties with the large tanks, this whole assembly is going to be offset from center. They say 3 to 5 inches. If you follow the directions on where to mount this, it ends up being about 5.5 inches off center. I didn't like that. I think an easier way for them to word this would be right here where your strap is to your fuel tank. That strap bolts through a captured nut. Remove that captured nut. That leaves you with the hole already in the frame. Line this blue frame up with that, and then pass your bolt through the fuel strap right through the frame. That also gives us a nice easy way to measure from the frame over to the frame of the truck at the front and at the back, so that we know this assembly is being put in there squared up. That then gave me the 3-inch offset that I prefer, and so that's where we're at. Now keep in mind, this kit I'm showing you is on a 2016 Super Duty. The way these brackets mount up on here and what you're looking at in this area is going to be vehicle specific. So just be aware of that. When the bed's in the down position, it can get off center. They give you some brackets that I'm still not sure how they're supposed to go on, that is supposed to line it up with the frame. I think an easier way to possibly do that is once you get your bed squared up, you see this, it looks rusty already, it's only been on here a couple weeks, but you see this hinge pin that goes through here. Square your bed up and then use some washers to keep that from being able to move back and forth. That will keep the bed aligned while it comes down. And I'm thinking that's probably a 1-inch pin, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to get some big washers, probably the kind of washers you would use on like snowplow shoes, and I'm going to give that a try. Now with your hydraulics, the directions were pretty good on the electrical and the hydraulics. The only thing I really want to say here is, if you have the powered down kit, you will also have a line that comes in at the top of the pump. And they did, like I said, they did a good job of that. I believe it was C1 is on this, on to the left when the reservoir's away from you. C2 was over here. That was high side, this was low side, something like that. The directions were fine there. I just want to point out, when you do this, make sure you're running your hydraulic lines on the fuel tank side of the truck. Don't run them over here near your exhaust. And when you're putting your lower hydraulic line on the bottom of the cylinder, thread it in the bottom of the cylinder first, then attach the end at the pump. Because up here it'll have a swivel attachment. The other end is a fixed attachment. So if you do this end first, you're going to take it back off to attach it at the pump end. One thing I need to point out also, if you mount this the way I did, this lower frame, which I recommend it, but with that, if you have a fuel tank skid plate, you'll need to remove that bracket. You see the bracket where the bracket goes on the lower corner of the fuel tank skid plate? That'll have to come off for this to fit in here. And it's not a big deal. I'll fabricate up a new bracket for that. And you do have to trim the corner area right in here by your def tank. And that's not a big deal either. Okay, the next piece of this puzzle was the bumper. Now you notice my bumper pivots with the bed. They list one of those options as just welding the bumper to the bed, but they don't tell you how. So let me just show you real quick how you would go about doing that. I'm going to trim my bumper, but for right now I just tack welded it on there, so it's not welded solid yet. But if you want to go that route, all you're doing is, you see the bumper mount here and the blue piece of the hinge assembly. And you see right there where I have it tacked on there. That's all you're doing to weld your bumper onto the bed so that it pivots with the bed. If you don't tow or use your receiver, this is by far the easiest way to do this. With that though, I had to move these out. These had to come over because we're not up flat against the frame anymore. Now we have the hinge assembly we have to get past. So what I did there was I just took off the mounting bolts where it bolts to the bed itself, or the bumper itself, and I added a couple washers there to push the bracket out, and then it matched up perfect with the blue hinge assemblies. So that's how I did that. If you weld your bumper on, the directions say it's going to move your receiver down 2 inches, I believe, and back 3. That was horribly off. I measured it as to where I would have to move my receiver back, I believe it was 6 inches, and down about 4. I don't want my receiver dragging on the ground, and I don't want it halfway under my truck. So I'm going to be bolting my receiver on there and then trimming the bumper so that it fits around it as it lowers. There's another video online of where somebody trimmed the top of the bumper. They welded the bumper to the truck frame and then cut out the middle section of the bumper and filled it in with diamond plating. So you have a couple different options. You can, choose which way you want to go. But yeah, that being said, this kit does require a welder. It does require some common sense, and you will have to do a little bit of fabricating to really optimize the kit. One other issue I had was the hardware up here. These supports on the bed are not square. They kind of fan out at the top. So those nuts and bolts were not long enough to go through there. So I had to go to the hardware store and get new hardware, and then I also added washers to the back sides here. Those were not included. That just kind of made me feel a little better about not crushing that support. So that was another little issue with the kit, was the hardware wasn't correct. For my remote, I have the 15-foot corded remote. I ran that right through the back wall, right underneath the carpeting up to my driver's seat. I like it there. I think that's a great spot for it. I don't think there was anything else I wanted to mention. I think that was about it. If you do have this extra space I talked about and you decide to put your pump here, it is an excellent location. It does run over top of your exhaust, so I did install a heat shield. I coated that with 3 coats of engine enamel paint that's good for like 1200 degrees. But yeah, overall I'm very happy with it. You know, it was definitely worth the money. So hopefully this video helps you out, gives you a little bit more of an overview of what you're looking at if you get this. And I don't mean to scare you away from it. Like I say, it's definitely doable, just not quite the bolt-on kit I was expecting. But I did do this by myself, and I don't say that to brag, but to let you know it is possible to do by yourself. Probably about the biggest issue you'll have is once you get the hinge assemblies on there, you would need a buddy or two to help you lift the bed into this position, and then use a 2x4 T to hold the bed up while you're working under here and bolting all this in there. Oh, there's one more thing I did want to mention. The mud flaps on here had to come off also. If you have the hard plastic mud flaps, they're going to hit up against your tires. You're going to fold them in half, so they need to be removed also to utilize this kit. Not a big deal. You can put soft, flexible rubber ones on there if you want. So, but yeah, excellent kit. Even better customer service. So I hope this video helped you out.